You know, one of the benefits of being someone who has played the game is you know what to expect and you can prepare yourself for some of the more heavy emotional moments that may have devastated you the first time around. And thankfully, I think I got through the worst of it last week relatively unscathed, so I can definitely make it through the rest of this just fine.
Give Sarah my love.
You unzip me. It's all coming back. It's all coming back. I hate you.
My prediction from last week turned out to be true in that this episode was mostly just some mournful respite, which was much needed and felt appropriate after the absolute fucking blitz of episode 2. This episode did pretty much exactly what I was expecting it to. In the game after Joel's demise, there's a very short and sweet moment afterwards where Ellie visits Joel's house and it essentially serves, as Troy Baker put it, as the funeral and the wake, where Ellie collects Joel's watch and gun before heading towards Seattle. You can also find some interesting details here, where you find out that Joel apparently had a hobby of carpentry and woodwork. You can also find Joel's original picture of him and Sarah next to one of him and Ellie. Interestingly, here in the show, there's like a 3-month gap between Joel's death and Ellie's departure. She had to heal from a fractured rib first, or a punctured lung, I think. I don't know. I didn't watch fucking Casualty. But in the game, it's like the next day, or the next few days at least. It's still soon enough that the bruises on Ellie's face haven't even healed yet. There's no town meeting, there's no making a plea to the council. Ellie just ups and leaves with Dina. The next section of gameplay is a lot of quiet exploration with the two in Seattle. And that kind of serves as the calm down period before the tension starts to rise again. We do get a bit of that towards the back end of this episode, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it in next week's episode. But because we're in a different medium and a much more episodic format, what I was hoping for and wound up getting was an extended time in Jackson where we could really feel the fallout from Joel's death before we go on to a new journey. Unlike in a medium of a video game, here you don't have to worry about that gameplay to cutscene ratio that I'm sure plagues game developers' brains all the time. Unless of course your name's Hideo Kojima, in which case you don't give a fuck. And for the most part, the episode is pretty much just that. After an excruciating cold open where Tommy has a final moment with his brother, a reawakened Ellie has a severe traumatic episode, and an altered opening credits with the Joel shadow being omitted. Too fucking soon, man. And then we jump ahead 3 months where Jackson is rebuilding after the devastation that hit them in the winter, and Ellie has only just been discharged from care and regular visits from Gail, who is desperately fishing to find out what Joel's cryptic last words meant to her. You know what I love about Gail is, despite the fact that she's the town psychologist and she does seem to really care about wanting to help her community a bit, she isn't this perfect voice of reason. She's a fucking mess herself since she lost her husband under mysterious circumstances. She's developed a drink problem and she's smoking Pineapple Express whenever she can. She's a bit more pessimistic than most professionals would want to be. And obviously Catherine O'Hara is just delightful as always. I do love this interaction between her and Ellie because it's mostly just Ellie saying all the right things in the most disingenuous manner just to get the fuck away. You know, the proper way to do therapy. But I love how Ellie gets this really concerned look on her face when Gail asks her about the "I saved you" quote. There's also this line as well.
Your final moment with someone doesn't define your whole time with them.
It shouldn't, but it often does.
I love how casually this line is just exchanged between these two, but it might honestly be the single most important line to Ellie's entire story and character. Then we get the aforementioned scene of Ellie going through Joel's house, and as with the game, it's just so beautiful. I love the decision to use the track Unbroken from Part 2's soundtrack in this moment, which, while I'm talking about it, incredible, like one of the most hauntingly beautiful Zen soundtracks that there is. Gustavo did not need to go as hard on the credits of this episode, but he did anyway, and I'm glad he did. Bella Ramsey's also just given this really heartbreaking performance in this scene as well. Ellie just slowly, almost painfully makes her way through the house to collect Joel's revolver before eventually breaking down and cuddling his jacket. She pivots and switches gears, of course, when she hears Dina enter the house. And this is her best fucking friend, the girl she has a serious crush on. If there's anyone she could be vulnerable around, it's her. But because Ellie is the way she is, she has to activate that Joel-inspired rocky exterior where you only show selective emotions to everyone else. I really don't understand the criticisms surrounding Bella Ramsey in the role of Ellie. I don't even remember this much discussion and discourse back when season 1 was coming out, but I just think they're terrific, as with Pedro Pascal and indeed everybody else in the show. And alright, look, I'll admit it, I don't think anyone is ever going to compare to Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker's interpretation of these characters, alright? To me, it's like a Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill as Batman and the Joker situation. Even though they are animated versions, they will forever be the standard with which I compare any and all future versions to, video game, live action, or otherwise. But it doesn't mean another actor, or indeed any number of actors, can't also be great in the same roles. But outside of that, some people do genuinely just think that Ellie's too annoying and reckless at this point. And interestingly, I do actually remember having very similar discussions with people about that aspect of Ellie when part 2 of the game first came out. Many felt that Ellie's character had been betrayed somehow because she wasn't as endearing or likeable as she once was in part 1, which, I will be fair, that is not untrue. In part 2, and indeed here, Ellie is much more closed off and bitter than she is in part 1. But she's a completely different person because of the shit she's been through. I think a lot of people really downplay how much the David situation changed Ellie's mentality and view of the world. She basically switches places with Joel after that point, where he's the one trying to connect through small talk and dumb jokes and caring gestures. It was all so simple when it was just the infected that were these evil monsters that you had to worry about. But experiencing this shit firsthand by yourself and just barely managing to get out alive, she has changed forever after that point. Not too long down the line, the walls are up firmly, and yes, she has a bit of an attitude, sometimes unnecessarily, but I feel like that's a fairly normal personality trait considering the circumstances. Also, if your biggest complaint is that Bella Ramsey doesn't look enough like Ellie from the game and that's somehow a problem, why are you not making the same complaint about Gabriel Luna or Isabella Merced, who look about as visually accurate to their game counterpart as Ellie does? Why do I never see side-by-side comparison pictures of these two online with the caption, "What terrible casting, boo"? I really do like what they're doing with Dina thus far though. She really is that ray of light that Ellie has lost within herself, and I still find it a very interesting distinction that she's the one who was with Joel when he got cornered. I was correct in thinking that this is only going to motivate Dina to stick by Ellie in her mission even more now, especially since she also had a personal connection with Joel.
I loved him too, you know.
These wounds won't seem to heal. This pain is just too real.
She is 100% on board with Ellie's crusade. The second Ellie gets out of hospital, Dina's like, here's these cunts' names, addresses, heights, weights, national insurance numbers, and medical records. Let's go fuck them up. It's no murder, it's punishment. These two really are stealing every scene that they are in together. I will say though, I think I have heavily misinterpreted the trajectory of their relationship in this depiction. In the game, it's the day after the kiss at the party that they solidify they're a thing at that point, which I thought was also the case here after episode 1, but apparently not. Also, Dina, you're fun and everything, but what are you doing? I mean, I know you were high at the party and whatnot, but what is this you're doing? Because it's starting to feel a bit cruel now. Ellie is very clearly into you and has been for a long time, and you fucking know it as well. Every time Dina enters the room, Ellie can just hear King Princess queuing up in the background, but constantly cuts off just as it gets to the chorus. Meanwhile, Dina, 3 months after she kissed a girl and definitely liked it, she is still trying to pull the "I was just a wee bit bi-curious" card.
You're gay, I'm not.
I'm just a little bi-curious.
I'm just saying, it's starting to feel like Ellie is being led on a wee bit now. She's been through enough as it is, for fuck's sake. I'm sure that'll all change when Ellie breaks the guitar out down the line. I do really love how these first couple of episodes have heavily leaned into the idea that Ellie is just detrimentally reckless and impulsive. It's a bit more subtle and not as visibly apparent until you get a bit into the game, but here it's very apparent very early on. I love it when she's preparing to leave for Seattle and you see what she's packing up, and her thought process was clearly just
Guns. Lots of guns.
Ellie is a fan of The Matrix, clearly, so that internal dialogue is probably canon. One thing I did not expect from this episode was getting some early insight into the Seraphites, otherwise known as the Scars, for obvious reasons. You don't get introduced to this bunch until a fair bit into the game, and they are presented in a much different fashion than they are here. It's actually one of my favourite parts of the game. I'm not spoiling anything, but they basically slowly drip feed you details and information about them in the environment of Seattle for quite a bit before you're introduced to them, and it is incredible. And to be fair, they don't really tell you anything about who they are or what their deal is here in this episode, so they very well still could do a bit of that in the coming episodes, but I'll keep a lid on that for now. It is definitely a nice touch to the story getting the opportunity to hear some others' input from around Jackson as Ellie makes her plea to the council at the town meeting, and I love how Ellie just cannot stand listening to the opposing arguments and is just completely bewildered when Seth of all people starts speaking some of Ellie's thoughts. I always enjoyed how in the game Ellie's interaction with Seth serves as just like this smaller scale version of showing Ellie's unforgiving and salty personality. Although I can't really give her too much shite for that, because Seth's apology in the game sounded about as sincere as Brian Griffin's.
Look, last night I was drinking too much.
Sure.
I'm trying to say I'm sorry.
This isn't about all the things you did wrong. It's about me apologizing. Okay, then apologize. I just did. No, you didn't. You just said it's about me apologizing. That's not actually apologizing.
But I like that he has a bit of an extended role here, being the one person in the room saying what Ellie wants to hear, but one of the last she'd want to hear it from. I also like how the vote is just heavily one-sided, because it would be realistically. It's been like 3 months, everybody's moved on at that point. But of course, the vote could have been rigged from the start and Ellie wasn't going to give two shites. Like Dina said, had someone told her about the WLF months ago, she would have crawled out of that fucking hospital like she was Lionel Salamanca. Even when Dina's like, this place has been burying hundreds of other bodies for the last few months, Ellie just has this look of disdain on her face. Like already she can't even stand to fathom other people's loss or issues, because while incapacitated for about 3 months, the 2-second clip of a broken golf club being stuck into Joel's jugular has just been playing on loop inside her head. I love how in the game Ellie basically wastes no time going to Seattle, but the decision here to have her need to heal from an injury for several months, having to just sit and live with her anger and pain and frustration before even being able to make a case to head towards Seattle is such an interesting way to begin Ellie's new descent. I am still a bit concerned about Tommy though. Like I said, I am loving Tommy in this season so far, and the same applies to this episode. The man burrowed his way into my soul with a look and 4 fucking words. But now that Ellie and Dina are already in Seattle by the end of the episode, I'm a bit worried that they might be omitting or altering Tommy's story of The Last of Us Part 2. You don't see him very much in the game after the beginning, but his presence is very much felt throughout, and you see a very different side to him through Ellie and Dina, which to be fair very well still could happen to some degree, and I just haven't been able to work out how yet, but I just don't see how now that Ellie and Dina have already left. So far Tommy's role is one of the biggest alterations they've made thus far. Now I'm thinking they might just pair his story with Jesse's in this version. I'll not get into what that is, but I'll just say I don't know how I feel about that either. I'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. Another concern I have is the amount of time we have left. For as much as I appreciate how this episode took the much slower and softer approach than the first 2 episodes did, and we got this more meditative, sorrowful time space after Joel's death, my feelings on it are largely going to hinge on how the remaining 4 episodes play out. Even saying that out loud sounds weird. Like, we just started and already I feel like we're near the end. Now look, here's the thing. I don't even think that 7 episodes is necessarily too little amount of time in order to tell the story of part 2, especially considering that this is likely going to be half of the story. And if we are largely just focusing on Ellie for the first chunk, I think 7 episodes would be ample time. Also, you have to remember, a huge portion of a game's runtime comes from the time you spend in gameplay, and if you're someone like me, the amount of times you restart encounters because you're obsessed with trying to make it through every section like you're Solid Snake. That being said though, it is looking like this season, kinda like the first one, might be doing a fair bit of jumping around. Not just timeline wise, but with other characters. We're obviously mainly following Ellie and Dina, and we have whatever's going to be going on with Tommy and or Jesse, and of course there's still this mysterious Gail and Eugene stuff. Like I've mentioned before, the show has already been renewed for a 3rd season, and I'm still like 70-30 on whether or not they're going to change up the structure of the story in any significant way for the remainder of the season. Also, no Abby in this episode, which I found interesting. Without giving too much away. In the game, Abby's side of things unfolds in a much more unique way, in a way that I'm not too sure would work in the episodic television format. You don't see her for a very long time after the game's intro, so I was thinking they might switch that up a little bit here. But she was completely absent for this episode, so maybe not. I've got a pretty strong idea in my head for as to how this season is going to end, and honestly, should that wind up being the case, I think it might actually piss more people off than Joel's death. It's honestly so hard to like talk about this season because there's so much information being withheld and danced around by everyone for now because of how part 2's story is structured, and even the creators know this. I find it hilarious listening to any interviews or like inside the episode stuff, and you can just tell they're dancing around so much information with regards as to why characters are acting the way they're acting or why they say certain things or something or other. And it's just because they can't say anything yet. That being said though, concerns aside, I feel like these first 3 episodes have pretty much been perfectly paced in my opinion. It's very in line with the game at this point while still injecting its own flavour to it. This was the slow burn episode after all, and I still found it to be paced extremely well, so maybe I'm just concerning over nothing. Also, there's every possibility that 1 or 2 episodes might be longer like season 1 did. Regardless, here's looking forward to next week's episode where it looks like the trouble is really gonna fucking start. Oh wait, I forgot. The coffee beans. Ellie putting coffee beans on Joel's grave as a callback to Joel's undying love for coffee. The beans that he probably would have traded his old fucking El Diablo for, and even though Ellie didn't get the appeal, she still knew how much he loved coffee. Like, how dare you? How fucking dare you use that sort of emotional manipulation on me? Alright, do you know what? Maybe I wasn't prepared for this as much as I thought I was.
It's ow, ow.